The Unbreakable Spirit, a journey from rock bottom to greatness. It was a cold November evening when Daniel Parker sat alone in a small, dimly lit apartment. The walls were bare, and the fridge hummed in an otherwise silent room. He had lost everything: his job, his savings, and, worst of all, his confidence. Just a year ago, Daniel was a rising star in the corporate world, climbing the ladder of success. He had a corner office, a six-figure salary, and a promising future. But in the blink of an eye, everything crumbled. The company downsized, and he was let go. What followed was a downward spiral of depression, rejection letters, and a deep sense of failure. For months, he applied for jobs, but no one was willing to take a chance on him. He had gone from making executive decisions to barely affording rent. His friends disappeared, one by one, and his family, though supportive, couldn't understand the depth of his despair. One night, after receiving yet another rejection email, Daniel stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror. His once sharp suit was replaced with worn-out clothes, and the spark in his eyes had faded. He whispered to himself, "Is this it? Is this how my story ends?" But deep inside, a voice, one he had ignored for too long, began to rise. It reminded him of his childhood dreams, his resilience, and his ability to fight against the odds. He realized that no one was coming to save him. If he wanted to change his life, he had to do it himself. The next morning, Daniel made a decision. He would rebuild, no matter how long it took. The climb begins. With renewed determination, he started small. He took a job as a barista at a local coffee shop. Not a glamorous position, but it put food on the table. He used his breaks to read business books and enrolled in free online courses on entrepreneurship. One day, while serving coffee, he overheard a conversation between two business people struggling to market their startup. Drawing from his corporate experience, Daniel offered them a few ideas. Impressed, they invited him for coffee the next day. That conversation turned into a freelance consulting gig, his first step back into the business world. Instead of waiting for a job to find him, Daniel created opportunities. He offered free workshops at local community centers, built a website with articles on business strategies, and slowly built a network of clients. There were countless sleepless nights, moments of doubt, and days when he wanted to give up. But every time he thought of quitting, he remembered the cold November night in his apartment, the feeling of helplessness. He swore never to feel that way again. Turning the tide within a year, Daniel's consulting business started gaining momentum. He landed bigger clients, and soon, companies that had once rejected him were now asking for his expertise. He expanded his business, hired a team, and even mentored others who were struggling just as he once did. 3 years after hitting rock bottom, Daniel stood in a packed auditorium, delivering a keynote speech on resilience and success. As he looked at the eager faces in the crowd, he smiled, knowing that his story was proof that failure is not the end, it's a beginning. The lesson Daniel's journey teaches us that setbacks are temporary, but giving up makes them permanent. When life knocks you down, you have two choices: stay down or rise stronger. Success isn't about never failing, it's about refusing to quit. No matter where you are right now, remember, your story isn't over. The Man Who Refused to Break. Chapter 1. The Collapse. Ethan Reynolds sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The world outside blurred as tears filled his eyes. He had never felt so exhausted, defeated, and utterly frustrated. For the past decade, Ethan had worked tirelessly to build a career, a family, and a life he could be proud of. But now, everything seemed to be crumbling around him. His business was failing, debt was piling up, and his marriage was hanging by a thread. No matter how hard he tried, things only seemed to get worse. Just a year ago, he had been a confident entrepreneur, running a small but successful digital marketing agency. He had poured everything, his savings, his time, his energy, into making it grow. But then the unexpected happened. A major client pulled out, leaving him with an overwhelming financial gap. The pandemic had only worsened the situation, forcing him to lay off employees he considered family. At home, things weren't much better. The stress of financial strain took a toll on his marriage. Arguments became frequent, and the love that once held them together now felt like a distant memory. As he sat in that car, parked in an empty lot, a terrible thought crossed his mind. What if I just disappeared? Would it make things easier? But deep inside, something held him back. A whisper, almost too quiet to hear. This is not how your story ends. Chapter 2. The Fall Before the Rise. Ethan wiped his tears, took a deep breath, and decided that he needed to take control, one step at a time. He started with what he could manage. Instead of drowning in self-pity, he confronted his problems head-on. He reached out to his remaining clients, offering them premium services at discounted rates. Some agreed, others declined, but he kept pushing forward. He spent late nights reworking his business model, adapting to new trends, and reaching out to potential investors. At home, he made an effort to communicate with his wife, to truly listen instead of just reacting. It wasn't easy. The wounds were deep and trust was fragile. But for the first time in months, they sat together without arguing, talking about their fears, their dreams, and how to fix what was broken. It took months of relentless effort. Some days felt like progress, while others felt like slipping back into despair. But Ethan kept reminding himself, every setback is a setup for a comeback. Chapter 3. The Turning Point. One morning, as Ethan was preparing yet another batch of proposals, he received an email from an unexpected source, an old college friend who had been following his journey on LinkedIn. The friend was now a senior executive at a growing tech company and was looking for a reliable marketing partner. They met for coffee, and by the end of the conversation, Ethan had secured the biggest contract of his career. It was the break he desperately needed. With renewed energy, he revamped his business, hired back some of his former employees, and launched new services that aligned with industry demands. Slowly but surely, his company stabilized. At home, he continued working on his marriage. There were no quick fixes, but commitment and patience began to rebuild the love they once had. Chapter 4. The Rise from the Ashes. 2 years after that night in the car, Ethan stood in front of a group of young entrepreneurs at a seminar. He told them about the failures, the struggles, and the nights when he thought of giving up. "But I didn't quit," he said, his voice steady. "And that's why I'm here today." His company had grown into a leading digital marketing firm. His marriage, once on the brink of collapse, was stronger than ever. Most importantly, he had transformed, not just as a businessman, but as a person. Life will knock you down. It will test you in ways you never imagined. But as long as you refuse to break, you will rise. The lesson. If you're feeling frustrated, exhausted, and like nothing is working, remember this. Your worst days are not your last days. The storm you're facing is not permanent. Keep pushing, keep fighting, one step at a time. Because one day, like Ethan, you'll look back and realize that the struggle was shaping you for something greater.